And I just kind of tell people, it's like, hey, I'm sorry, I kind of flew off the handle a little bit. Sorry about that. But hey, you know what? Can we just kind of move on from here? Let's make this work. Because I took it personally when someone started coming at me. I didn't take it professionally at all. I've had I've had a number of job interviews where I just made sure I took it personally. I've had a lot of different jobs, moved around quite a bit, and long story there. But basically, I was really looking to like just put a lot of skills in my basket and really enjoy what it was I was doing. But one of the most important things I did was to just start learning how to bring my attitude in, that I'm have a good attitude. No matter what happens, this is not a personal affront on me. And I take that into each and every one of my jobs as well. This is not a personal affront to me. This may be a criticism about how I'm doing my job, but it's not a personal affront to who I am as a human being. And by separating that out, I remove some of that emotion from that. And it's not that I'm trying to be an emotionless clinical character, but it's that I need to have a clear brain. I need to be thinking clearly all the time. And you and I all know that we need to be thinking clearly when we're dealing with problems. ICU and ER nurses especially, life flight nurses, they have got to remain really calm and professional during an emergent situation. They're really good at compartmentalizing, taking things really professionally. Orders are shouted, things are done, everyone's moving around, they're doing all this stuff, and then all at the end of it, then they might go do the download time and the unload time, and they get rid of the negative energy time that happens. But let's talking about not taking it personally. It's taking it professionally. So you don't so much internalize that and take it home with you at the end of the day to take home to your family. It's really you really want to just leave that stuff at the table wherever it's at. I don't want to be carrying that baggage around. So I really work on taking criticisms and customer service and whatever it is professionally. And a lot of times I'll smile. It depends on the situation. A lot of times I'll smile. Sometimes I'll apologize to them, either outwardly, hey, I'm sorry. I understand what you're going through, and this is what I found. I'll use the feel, felt, found way of talking with someone as well, which can be a really powerful method of communicating with people, because communication, on top of taking it professionally, communication is really key. And it is so key that communication can make or break your entire career multiple times. Just poor communication can really break you. It's another one of those key components. I'll talk about that a lot more down the road. But yeah, communication is just utmost and of high importance. And good communication skills are really needed. You have to learn how to not get caught up in the emotion of stuff. I had to learn how to not get all caught up in the emotion of the conversation, and really just make sure that I was truly and honestly communicating succinctly. And part of that communication was listening. That's one of my challenges. I don't know about you out there, but one of my biggest challenges is interrupting people while they're talking and just directing something, to where it needs to be. Now, as a nurse, oftentimes we are strapped for what? Time. We're often strapped for time, where I feel like we're just busy and overworked and overwhelmed, don't have enough time to get whatever it is get done. So what we got to do is make sure that we're managing that time. And part of that is just being able to communicate really effectively, whether it's with members, team members, patients, whatever it is at your residence, whatever your lingo is for your particular background, is communicating and communicating really well. And that brings us into really connecting with people in 30 seconds or less, or connecting in 90 seconds or less. Oftentimes, it's more about asking a question, a really good question, and then listening for a couple of minutes. And then keeping in mind that you're going to continue asking those more open ended questions. I took a class twice in my recent career I work for an insurance company right now, but I took a class, and it was effective communication. And one of the methods that he used was open-ended questions, which we as nurses can be a little scared of, because once you get someone talking about their story, what happens? 3 hours goes by and you don't have the information you need. So asking really effective open-ended questions, questions that draw out information and maybe get multiple points of information, of data that we as medical professionals have to collect, and also being able to drive that conversation, communicating to drive that conversation. They ask, what's that have to do with connecting with them in 30 or 90 seconds? Well, that's how you have an introduction of yourself. You do a elevator pitch. Basically, write an elevator pitch. Hey, my name's Dave Deerling. I've been a nurse for 20 years. I've worked in multiple fields of nursing. I've done everything from floor nursing all the way up to management nursing. I'm going to be your nurse tonight. We're going to do what we got. I got a bunch of questions to ask you. I'm going to direct you in some of my answers. I'm going to let you talk for a while at length at some of your other answers, but I might have to cut you short and actually drive you to more of the information that I really need to collect in a short amount of time. Your name is, tell me your story. Tell me why you're here. And that's just a little way of just connecting, because you're setting a little field of who you are and what you've done. And even if you're a brand new nurse, that's fine. You're a brand new nurse. What are you going to say? Hey, my name's Dave. I just got my nursing license two nights ago, and this is my first night. I'm orienting with someone else. I did 2 years of clinical and 2 years of working as getting my education working on the floor. So I do have some background, and I've done a lot of reading and studying, and I've also had some hands-on experience. I'm going to help you get through the day. I have this interview I have to do with you. It's going to be a little bit long, but I really need to cut it short at some points. I'll be asking you a bunch of questions like this. Your name is, now we verify their information. Oh, when were you born? Yes. Do you have any surgeries? Tell me what brought you here. And that's really connecting with people in a way. Is that one, you're just giving yourself a little introduction. That's being a nurse. Now, in a personal life, you might say, hey, my name's Dave, do an elevator speech again. This is what I do, and let me ask you, what do you do? That's a common question. What do you do? What are your interests? Julia, have you ever thought about flying a plane? No? What kind of hobbies do you have? Those are little connecting questions, and then ask and do some reflective listening. Reflective listening is a good one. I mean, it's tough. Reflective listening takes a lot of intentional attention, I would say. It takes a lot of intentional attention to be a good reflective listener, because you're reflecting back what someone is saying, and then asking them another question to clarify that. Then you're following up with another question to make sure that you're on the right track and you're on the right page. Guilty party. Can't tell you how many times I haven't done reflective listening. It's one of those active things I've worked on for myself and for the better part of my 20-year career. And, I just find it to be extremely helpful, especially working in mental health. Anyone out there who's worked in the mental health field, it can be really tough to, yeah, how's it going, man? It can be really tough to deal with someone who's having these upsets, and there's some people I find, and this is me as an observer, there's some nurses I find that really seem to kind of ramp a patient up, and then there's other nurses who really kind of go with the flow a little bit, and then they help to influence that patient to do what they need them to do, still giving them choices and such. And if you just take a step back, and if you've had a really horrible day and everything just seems to be going wrong, sometimes you just got to step back. I know I do. I take a step back and I take a look and I go, okay, what could I have done differently? What was it that I did that maybe didn't make this go quite as smoothly as it could have? And oftentimes it was either my attitude, it was being distracted, It was not listening well. It was not being a good reflective listener, not communicating well. It's those things. And they were just small things, but a cascade of those small things going on through an 8 or a 12-hour shift can really, really affect the way your day goes. And once you sit back and you reflect for a few minutes on those things that you do, just kind of pay attention, pull out certain instances. It's not too hard to figure out. It's like, oh, you know what? If I just try not to do that again, maybe much better shift, But if you're having a crappy shift every single time, you might want to just step back. I know I was in a period of my nursing career where it just seemed like, and it was for like a 3 or 4 or 5 month period, like everything was just horrible, everything was bad, and I'd finally taken some time off. I'd been working back to back 10s and 12s and 8s, and I mean, it just, no, not 12s, not back to back. Well, day after day after day, but 20, 12-hour shifts in a row can get a little wore out when you're working long-term care as SNF. So I ended up taking like 4 days off because I was just like, I'm wiped out, I'm tired, I hurt, whatever. And I sat back and I realized that I had not been doing good self-care, and that poor self-care had directly come into my career in that I was working in the job site. And because I wasn't having good self care, I wasn't able to really focus and attend to my members' or patients' needs. And that was really quite frustrating to me when I looked at that. And I was like, oh, I need to take more care of myself. I need to take more care of myself. And that's when I started using the power of no. The power of no. Sometimes you just have to tell a boss. And I've been told this a few times, bosses, when they're coming at you and putting more work on your shoulders, they're looking at the really big picture. They're looking at the much broader horizon, not your minute to minute, play of what's going on in your head. And sometimes you just have to sit back and maybe you can accomplish what they asked you to do, or most of what they asked you to do. And sometimes you just have to say, you know what, either I'm going to take care of these patients and do all the blood sugars and their insulins and their medications, and, I'm going to do all these treatments and change all these wounds, or I can take care of your task. And that's a way of saying no without actually saying no, so it's not offensive. Or you can just and then simply ask, can I have a little levity? I mean, can I just try to do part of this task? If I can get this part done, then I'll work on some more a little bit later. And bosses are oftentimes a lot more flexible than we might think. It's a communication thing, and it's being professional in that way. And professional communication is really important. And I know we as nurses, we have bad senses of humor. We can be really crass and nasty and vile to each other and others around us, and just be silly and just really gross. And that's not always professional. There's a time and place for that. And the time and place for that is usually not when we're dealing with our other coworkers in those stressful situations, or dealing with our bosses or patients or family members. And in the I'm really kind of talking a long, broad scope about your career and your life goals. I mean, how do you want your career to be? Where do you see yourself going? I know I've run into it. I've mentored a number of nurses who are new. So they got a new 4-year degree, maybe a 2-year degree, working towards their 4-year degree, and then going into their bachelor's, and go to their master's and their PhD or nurse practitioner, or whatever it is they're going to do. They've stepped out what they're going to do over that long time frame, because you got to look at a career as being 30 or 40 years long. That doesn't mean the same job, but that might mean the same job type. Like, I've been a nurse for 20 years. I have not worked in any one place for more than, I think, 5 years was the longest I worked in any one place. So I've done a lot of 2-year stints here and there, and some smaller stints, places that just didn't work out. I didn't quite fit in with the team, and the team didn't quite fit my morals. So it was it was an interview of both sides. So I gave it a shot, and I felt that neither side was going to win. Or my employer decided that maybe when I was younger, I was a lot more headstrong and I would just pop stuff off and, just speak the truth, um, which truth is very important. But learning how to deliver that in a more professional manner is definitely the way of stretching yourself in a much better way. And I'm hoping to lift and empower and uplift those of you out there who are paying attention to this. You can learn from my lessons, learn from my mistakes over 20 years of nursing, a nursing career where I've just made oodles and oodles of mistakes. Oodles of mistakes, a lot of professional mistakes. And I'm not talking about medication errors. I'm not talking about someone dying on my shift, which I've only had it happen a couple of times, and all of them were expected. So it's not like they coded and died. It didn't work in the emergency room. But just over that long period, career is a good thing. And I want to talk a little bit now about SMART goals. Those are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Look up on YouTube anywhere you want. I'll do some trainings on as well. Look up a SMART goal. Now, SMART goals are really, I've been doing SMART goals for a while, and I still struggle with a SMART goal from time to time. But, a SMART goal is like, I'm going to make $100,000 a year as a registered nurse, working from home, consulting businesses by the end of January 1, 2021. It's a SMART goal. It has all the pieces to it. But that's only one SMART goal. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do is write multiple SMART goals and review those SMART goals on a daily basis. So I'm going to encourage you to do a 6-month goal, a 1-year goal, a 3-year goal, a 5-year goal, and a 10-year goal. And then review in a year, go back and review the 6-month, the 1 year, go from there. And then just see where you've grown, where else you can grow. Maybe your decision on where your career path was going at that point has changed. I know certainly since I've started doing SMART goals for my career, I have made things happen. I'll just tell you a quick story. I've been working an agency job for, about 5 years now. And I was like, I really need to get some solid income. I need to bump up my income. I really need to make some good money at this point. And I'd like to have a solid job with a regular weekly pay. And so what did I do? I went out and I wrote a goal card and I said, I'm going to make minimum, let's throw a number out there because I can't tell you what my real salary is, but I'm going to make a minimum of $72,000 a year. I'm going to work 5 days a week in an office job where I'm able to expand and grow and have lots of area to grow. I wrote that card in January of last year, so a little over a year and several months ago. And I reviewed that card several times a day, read it out loud in the mirror with passion and emotion. And lo and behold, in March, I was offered a job, actually in February. So 6 weeks later, I was offered to apply for a good position. And then I got my interview, and I was offered the job. I was offered a really good salary for that job. And then by April 1st of 2019, I was actually finally hired on. I was actually hired in early March, but I couldn't start because of training stuff. But anyway, that was really important. That was a short-term goal. I have longer-term goals as well that I like to look at. This here, consulting and empowering nurses is one of my SMART goals. I had a goal of launching this in 90 days. I did in just under 90 days, and I have some financial goals attached to it. I have some professional goals attached to it, and I have some other goals attached to that, so that I'm growing this whole time. Right? So goals, I find that they're really important. And they're really important in personal life as well. The way I met my wife was the same thing. I had a goal card. First thing I did was I broke down what kind of woman I wanted to have in my life, who I wanted to be married to, who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. You can do this with your career, and as I've done this with my career as well. And so I wanted to see who it was I was going to be with. And I wrote down like 20, 30, 40 things. I don't remember anymore at this point, but I wrote down a lot of stuff that I thought I would like to have in a woman who I would spend the rest of my life with. Whittled it down a little bit, and I looked and said, oh, I haven't quite grown to the point of attracting that kind of woman into my life. I haven't grown there yet. So I kept that card. I kept reading it over and over again. I understood who I was. I was really doing a lot of meditating and working on myself at that point. And it was about 3 to 4 months later, I met my wife. I had moved a lot and it got packed up in a box. We hadn't even looked, didn't even know I had that card anymore, hadn't even paid attention to it. And we were unpacking some boxes about 2 years ago, and my wife pulls this card out, and I was like, oh man, that's my goal card about who I was going to marry. And I sat down and I read it with my wife, and she hit every darn point but one insignificant point. Every point. And so that's just the power of writing down a goal, reviewing a goal, and acting on that goal. Figuring out a way to act on it, because the action I talked earlier about, knowledge plus action is power. And it's absolutely true. If you're not acting towards your knowledge, then you're not using your power. And that's where that's at. So I think that is just about all we're going to do today. Sorry, bunnies are bouncing around at my feet. I think that's a pretty good overview of what we're going to talk about. Again, my name's Dave Dearling. I'm a registered nurse, been a nurse for 20 years. This is yet another episode of the Badass Nurse Consultant. The band coach, as I call myself, Badass Nurse Development Coach. And, I really had a good time with you guys tonight. And I'll tell you what, I really hope I've given you something to work with. And I'm looking forward to expanding on a lot of these topics in the future. We will be having some content available. I'll have a subscription service. When that comes around, I'll be sending out some emails to anybody who's signed up and let you guys know what's going on. And I'm hoping to have a lot of great information for you. I'm going to bring on some guest speakers. We're going to build this thing out. It's been one of my passions for a long time. And I really hope that we can just grow in this together and grow to be amazing people together. That's what we're all about, man, making connection. And it's become even more important in this quarantine lockdown thing that's been going on, where human connection is really, really important. And you find that people who are not connected are really struggling. Without the human contact, we have to have this digital contact for right now. Voice, videos, phones, text messages, letters, whatever it is you need to do. All right, go out there and have a great day. I am Dave Dearling, and there, if you want some more info, there was info.nextlevelrn@gmail.com. That's info.nextlevelrn@gmail.com. And I also have a phone number available for anyone who wants to email me, and we can do some text message blasts as well. Just some positive, uplifting stuff. No spamming. I might give an offer or two out there. I don't want to do this for nothing. I do want to help. I do get some fulfillment out of it, but I also intend on helping you out. And so, not everything's free. I've spent 20 years of my life refining this stuff and looking at this personal and professional development information, and I feel really strongly about it. And I hope you will join me in this journey as well. That's it. Signing off for another beautiful day at the studios of the Next Level RN, or the band coach, Badass Nurse Development Coach. You guys have a great and amazing day. We shall chat with you